The space station floated silently on the edge of an uncharted system, its silver body reflecting the pale light of a dying star. Few ships came this far, and those who did often carried stories of desperation, exile, or secret missions. On one of the docking platforms, a cloaked figure stepped down from a battered freighter, her arm wrapped protectively around the small child walking at her side. No one paid attention at first. Space stations were filled with strangers, smugglers, and drifters. But if anyone had looked closer, they would have noticed something strange about the woman's eyes. Silver, glowing faintly under the hood, like twin moons that had seen too much. The child clutched her hand tightly, his face half hidden, but his wide gaze flicked quickly from one person to another, as though searching for something, or someone. The woman had traveled across galaxies with nothing but a name in her heart and a memory that refused to fade. She had no guarantees that the man she sought was even alive. For years, she had carried the echo of his voice, the memory of his hand pulling her from the wreckage, and the impossible kindness in his eyes when no one else had shown mercy. That memory had burned so deeply into her soul that it became her compass. Now she was here, on the fringes of human territory, her last hope guiding her to this place. The child tugged her hand and whispered, "Is this where he is?" The woman's lips tightened. She had told him the story of the human many times, how he had saved her when she was broken, how he had fought against others of his kind to protect her. But now, standing here, she wondered if she had chased a ghost through the stars. Inside the station, the air smelled of metal, oil, and fear. Merchants shouted, guards scanned for threats, and shadows lingered in every corner. The woman moved carefully, her cloak brushing the floor, hiding the faint glow of her alien skin. The child stumbled, tired from the long journey, and she lifted him into her arms. He buried his face against her shoulder. For a moment, she let herself breathe, but even then, her eyes kept moving, searching, hunting. Somewhere in this vast darkness, there was a man who had changed the course of her life. She could still hear the words he whispered long ago, "Survive. One day, the stars will open for you again." But survival had come with a price. There were those who wanted her dead, those who saw her child as a threat, and those who still hunted her for reasons she did not fully understand. She had crossed galaxies not only to find the man but to escape those who wanted to silence her forever. The broken girl he had once saved was now a mother, and the child she carried was more important than anyone could guess. She tightened her grip on the boy, her pulse quickening as she spotted a group of armored figures at the far end of the corridor. They were scanning the crowd, their eyes sharp, their movements too controlled. They were not merchants or travelers. They were hunters. Her steps quickened. She could not afford to be seen. The memory of burning ships and soldiers shouting her name surged inside her. She moved through the crowd like a shadow, her cloak hiding her face. The boy stirred and whispered, "Mama, they're looking for us." Her heart clenched, but she forced herself to remain calm. "Stay quiet," she whispered back. Her silver eyes scanned the hall ahead, and then, she froze. Across the busy walkway, leaning against a rusted wall, was a human man with tired eyes and a scar running down his cheek. He was older now, his shoulders heavy with years of battle, his clothes plain and worn. But she knew him instantly. The fire in her chest surged, her breath caught, and for a moment, she forgot how to move. The man's eyes lifted. For a second, he didn't seem to recognize her, but then something shifted in his gaze. His body went still, his jaw tightening as though he was staring at a ghost. The child lifted his head and whispered, "Is that him?" The woman nodded slowly, her heart hammering in her chest. Yes, it was him. The human who had once saved her life. The man who had been her only beacon of hope in a universe filled with cruelty. She had crossed galaxies to find him, but now, standing only a few steps away, she realized the hardest part was yet to come. Because the hunters had seen her too. The armored figures began moving quickly through the crowd, their helmets scanning, their weapons hidden but ready. The woman's hands tightened around the child. She could feel her throat closing, panic rising, but she forced herself to stay steady. This was it, the moment where fate would either give her back the hope she had carried all these years or crush it forever. Her eyes locked with the humans across the hall. Would he remember her? Would he still care? Or would he turn away, leaving her to the hunters who were closing in? The dying star outside cast its faint glow through the station's long windows, and in that fragile light, the woman took her first step toward him. The child clung to her, whispering her name, but she didn't stop. Every sound around her faded. The shouting merchants, the guards, the footsteps of hunters, until there was only him. The human who had once saved her. The human who, perhaps, would have to save her again. The ship drifted in the endless black, its engines whispering as if afraid to wake the silence of space. Inside the narrow cabin, the woman held the child close to her chest. Her eyes, golden and tired, moved from one fading star to another outside the window. Every flash of light reminded her how far they had come, and how much farther they still had to go. She whispered something soft in her language to calm the boy, but her words trembled. He was too young to understand, yet he pressed his small hand against her chest, as if feeling her heartbeat was enough to trust that she would never let him go. The woman knew the danger of her journey. She had crossed territories where her people were hunted, slipping through checkpoints where soldiers wore the mark of empires that would kill her for even breathing their air. Each stop, each hidden port, had been a gamble. And yet, she pressed forward, guided by a name burned into her memory, the human. The one who had once lifted her broken body from the dirt, when all others had left her to die. He had saved her when no one else would. Now, she carried that debt like fire inside her. She would not stop until she found him again. But the galaxy was vast, and humans were rare, so rare that many doubted they even existed beyond scattered myths. The woman had heard whispers, traders speaking of Earth, of colonies that were rising, of humans who had started to push deeper into the stars. Yet whispers were dangerous things. They led to traps as often as they led to truth. More than once, she had followed rumors only to find herself cornered by raiders, desperate men who saw her as a prize to sell or a corpse to rob. Still, she endured, because the memory of the human's face burned brighter than fear. The child stirred, and she looked down at him. His features carried pieces of her, but not all. His eyes, sharp, curious, blue as the ocean she had only seen on stolen recordings, were not her people's eyes. They were his. The child's father. The human. She had told herself that one day she would not only find the man who had saved her, but show him the boy he had unknowingly given her. That truth pushed her forward even when exhaustion threatened to break her apart. The ship rattled suddenly, a warning flashing red across the cracked console. The woman's breath caught. She scanned the display and cursed under her breath. Something was following. A faint signature, faint but steady, clinging to her trail like a shadow. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls, forcing the small craft into a sharp drift, sliding behind a stretch of asteroid rock. The child whimpered at the violent movement, but she hushed him quickly, pressing her lips to his forehead. The stars disappeared behind stone, but the woman's eyes stayed locked on the scanner. The shadow was growing closer. Her body tensed. She had been chased before, but this felt different. The signal was too precise, too deliberate. Whoever it was, they were not some random scavengers stumbling across her path. This was a hunt. She swallowed her fear and pressed the child tighter to her chest. She had no weapons, no escort, no allies waiting in the next sector. All she had was her determination and the memory of the human's voice telling her, long ago, "Don't stop fighting." The sound of a docking latch echoed through her ship. Her heart froze. The shadow had found her. The lights flickered, and for a moment she thought the ship itself would die, stranding them in darkness. She moved to the door, blocking the child with her own body, her hands trembling but ready. The metal hissed as it began to open. She braced for soldiers, for raiders, for death. But the figure that stepped through the smoke-filled hatch was not armored, not monstrous. It was tall, broad, human. The sight of him hit her like a wave, stealing her breath, stealing her fear. She stared, unable to move, unable to believe. His hair was darker than she remembered, streaked with age. His eyes, sharp and alive, locked on hers with recognition. For a heartbeat, neither of them spoke. The silence was heavy, broken only by the faint hum of the engines. Then the man whispered, almost too softly to hear, "It's you." And the woman's knees nearly gave way, because after years of running, after galaxies crossed, after endless fear and pain, she had found him. The human who once saved her life. And now, with the child clinging to her dress, she needed him more than ever. The ship drifted silently through the void, carrying the woman and her child farther from the edge of familiar stars. Kaylin sat with her small hands pressed against the observation glass, her wide eyes watching streaks of distant light as if they were whispers of stories she couldn't hear. Her mother, Leora, stood close behind her, quiet but restless. Each star system they passed was another reminder of the narrowing trail. The faint signals she was following were fading. But she couldn't stop. Somewhere beyond these lifeless stretches of space was the man she owed everything to. Somewhere in this darkness was the human who had once lifted her broken body from the dirt and told her she could live. The child turned, her small voice breaking the silence. "Mama, is he real? The man you're searching for?" Leora's heart tightened. She knelt, brushing Kaylin's dark hair back gently. "Yes, little one. He's real. I saw him when the world was fire. I saw him when no one else cared if I lived. He saved me when everyone else turned away. I promised myself if I ever had the chance, I'd find him again." The child frowned, as if trying to fit the story into her young understanding. "Why would a stranger help you?" Leora hesitated. Her people had not been known for kindness. In her culture, weakness was discarded, not healed. The idea of mercy had been foreign, until she met him. "Because, Kaylin," she whispered, "he was human. And humans, they see life differently. They fight to protect, even when it gains them nothing. That is why I must find him. So you can see with your own eyes what kindness means." Kaylin pressed her cheek against her mother's arm, silent, though the unspoken worry lingered in her eyes. The ship jolted suddenly. Warning lights flashed across the console. Leora sprang to the controls. The NAV systems flickered, streams of alien code spilling down the screens. They had been caught. A gravity tether, an old pirate trick. The vessel shuddered as an invisible force dragged it from its course, pulling it toward the jagged silhouette of a cruiser lurking in the black. Panic rose in her chest. She had no weapons that could match such power. She glanced at Kaylin, who clung to the chair with wide eyes. "Hold tight, little one." The cruiser filled the viewport now, its hull scarred, patched with uneven metal, raiders who lived on scavenging and cruelty. A voice cracked through the comms, sharp and mocking. "Unmarked vessel. Power down engines. Transfer your cargo. No resistance, and you live." Leora's blood ran cold. They had no cargo but themselves. And she knew what raiders did when they found the weak. Her hands hovered over the controls, her mind racing. She couldn't outfight them, but maybe she could stall, just long enough. "Please," she said into the comm, forcing calm into her tone. "We carry nothing of worth. Just a mother and child." Laughter echoed back, cruel and hollow. "Then the child will fetch a price. Open your hatch, and maybe we won't space you both." Kaylin clutched her mother's arm, trembling. Leora's breath caught in her throat. She could not lose her child. Not here, not like this. She looked at the fading trail on her console, the coordinates that pointed to him. The human. For a moment, despair threatened to crush her. Then something inside hardened. He had saved her once. Now it was her turn to fight for Kaylin the way he once fought for her. Her fingers flew across the controls. She rerouted power, forcing the ship's engines into a dangerous overdrive. The hull groaned, lights dimmed, but the vessel lurched violently. The raider's tether strained as her ship surged forward, pulling against its hold. Warnings blared, metal screamed, but she did not stop. She slammed the emergency override, and with a burst of desperate energy, the tether snapped. The raider ship spun in pursuit, but the smaller craft darted into a nearby asteroid field. Rock shadows swallowed them whole. The raiders fired, streaks of plasma cutting through stone, but Leora twisted the ship through narrow gaps, scraping close enough to make Kalen cry out. Every move was a gamble, but luck, or something greater, guided her through. At last, silence returned. The raiders fell back, unwilling to risk the dense field. Leora slumped against the console, sweat on her brow, her chest heaving. Kalen crawled into her lap, clinging tightly. We're safe, Mama," the child whispered. "For now," Leora breathed, pressing her lips to the child's forehead. "But we must move faster. They'll tell others. This path is no longer safe." Her eyes drifted back to the trail on the console. It was faint, almost gone. But it was still there. The human was still out there. And now, more than ever, she needed to find him. Because the galaxy was growing darker by the day, and only someone like him could remind her why hope still mattered. The station had been a moment of peace, but peace never lasted for long. Lyra knew it. The child felt it too, for every time she glanced at the windows, his small hands would clutch tighter at her arm. He was not speaking much these days, only watching, only listening. Children understood danger in ways even adults could not explain. They felt it in the air, in the tremor of footsteps, in the silence of strangers who stared too long. They had barely rested before the shadows moved again. Lyra saw them first in the mirrored glass of the docking bay. Dark figures in long coats. They weren't traders, weren't travelers, weren't anyone who belonged. Their steps were too measured, their gazes too sharp. Hunters. The kind who never gave up. She whispered to the child, "Stay close and don't let go." The crowd in the bay became their shield. Humans, reptilians, insectoids, all moving in their own rhythm, carrying cargo and shouting over each other. Lyra slipped into that current like a ghost, guiding the boy with practiced ease. But the hunters were skilled too. They didn't rush, didn't chase. They followed at a distance, always staying in her sight, like wolves circling the herd. Her mind raced. The portal had brought her to the edge of human space, to the place she had prayed to reach. Yet reaching was not enough. Somewhere in this wide dark galaxy, the man who had once saved her life was still alive. She needed to find him. She needed his strength, his courage, the impossible will that humans carried inside them. But until then, she had to survive. She led the child into the maintenance corridors, dim tunnels of steel and dripping pipes. The smell of burnt oil filled the air. Few people wandered here, which made it both safer and more dangerous. Her steps echoed, quick but careful. She kept one hand on the boy, the other near the hidden blade she carried beneath her cloak. Behind them, the sound came, boots striking the floor. Slow. Deliberate. Closer. Lyra stopped. She pulled the child behind her and pressed him against the wall. Her heart beat like thunder. The hunter's shadows stretched across the corridor as they turned the corner. "Give us the girl," one of them said in a low voice. His accent was not from any world she knew. His eyes gleamed in the faint light, sharp and hungry. "We don't care about you or the boy. Only her." Lyra's breath caught. The girl. They were after the child. For a moment, the truth burned inside her. This boy was not ordinary. That was why she had been hunted all these years, why she had crossed galaxies in silence. They wanted him. And if they took him, his life would end before it even had the chance to begin. "No," she whispered, though her voice shook. The hunters smiled coldly. They began to step forward. Then a sound ripped through the corridor. A heavy metallic thud. The hunters froze, turning. Another thud. And then a shadow even darker than theirs filled the end of the tunnel. Broad shoulders, tall frame, steps like iron striking steel. A man walked out of the darkness. He did not carry a weapon in his hands, yet the air around him felt like a weapon itself. His gaze was sharp, colder than the void outside the station, but behind it burned a light of defiance. He stopped only once, eyes cutting through the hunters, then shifting to Lyra, and to the boy. The hunters stiffened. For the first time, they looked uncertain. The man's voice was calm, deep, carrying weight like stone. "You're not taking them." The hunters stepped back, their confidence faltering. They had not expected him. No one ever expected humans. Lyra's heart froze. Her eyes widened, her throat locked. She had found him. After all this time, after crossing star upon star, she was staring at the man who had once saved her life. And now, standing in this narrow, broken corridor, he was about to save them again. The corridor became a frozen battlefield. The hunters hesitated, but hesitation never lasted. They had stalked prey across worlds, captured fugitives from empires, dragged rebels out of hiding holes. To them, one man blocking a hallway was nothing. Yet something in the air shifted the moment the human stepped forward. It was not the weight of footsteps, it was the weight of intent. The first hunter sneered and reached for the long blade hidden in his coat. "You don't know who we are," he spat, his voice sharp as broken glass. The man's expression didn't change. His eyes locked onto the blade, then flicked back to the hunter's face. Calm. Cold. He did not move his hands. He did not need to. "I don't care who you are," he said softly. "Walk away." The words carried no threat, yet the corridor itself seemed to tighten, like the walls knew something terrible was about to happen. Lyra gripped the boy's shoulder, her pulse racing. She had seen soldiers, assassins, warlords. But she had never seen stillness used as a weapon. That was the human way. They did not boast. They did not warn. They simply endured, until it was time to strike. The hunters laughed. Too loudly, too forced. The second one drew his own weapon, a jagged pistol with glowing veins of power. "We'll take the child, and maybe we'll let you crawl away after." The boy flinched. He pressed closer to Lyra, his small hand clutching her cloak so tightly his knuckles turned white. His eyes were wide, reflecting the blue glow of the pistol, and in that moment Lyra realized something deeper. The hunters were not after him because of what he was, they were after him because of what he could become. The human stepped closer. No weapon. No armor. Just raw presence. He stopped between Lyra and the hunters, his shoulders filling the space, his frame shielding them both completely. His voice was a low murmur, but it cut sharper than any blade. "You had your chance." The first hunter lunged. Too fast for most eyes. But the man's body moved like lightning hidden in stone. His hand snapped forward, catching the blade mid-strike, twisting, and before the hunter even understood what had happened, the knife was ripped from his grip. A heartbeat later, the blade was buried in the wall, through the hunter's arm. His scream echoed down the steel corridor. The second hunter fired. The pistol's energy blast roared, burning the air, striking the wall where the man had been. But the human was already moving, faster than the sound, faster than the recoil. His shoulder slammed into the hunter's chest with such force that metal cracked. The pistol clattered away, sliding across the floor. Lyra pulled the boy back, her breath trembling. She wanted to look away, but she couldn't. What she was watching was not a fight. It was a demonstration. The hunters were killers trained in shadows, but against this single human, their training meant nothing. The corridor filled with chaos. A broken arm. A crushed rib. A strike so swift the third hunter never saw the fist before it met his jaw, dropping him in silence. The others hesitated now, panic flickering across their eyes. They had been told humans were dangerous, but danger was an empty word until you faced it. Now they understood. The last hunter stumbled back, raising trembling hands. "Wait, stop. We weren't told you." The man advanced, each step echoing like a drum of war. He stopped only when the hunter's back struck the wall. His hand closed around the hunter's collar, lifting him from the floor as if he were weightless. The man's voice was colder now, each word heavy with finality. "If you come again, there won't be a second warning." Then he let go. The hunter collapsed, gasping, scrambling across the floor before fleeing into the shadows. The others dragged themselves after him, broken and bleeding, their pride shattered more than their bones. Silence returned to the corridor. The air smelled of burned ozone and blood. The man turned. His eyes softened for the first time, looking not at Lyra, not even at her, but at the boy. The child met his gaze. Something unspoken passed between them. Recognition, as if some hidden bond had been waiting to awaken. Lyra's heart pounded. She stepped forward, her voice trembling. "It's you. I found you." The man tilted his head slightly, his expression unreadable. But his reply carried weight enough to shake her soul. "You shouldn't have come." The vast hall of the human outpost was quiet when the woman stepped in, her child held close against her chest. For so many years she had imagined this moment, and yet now her legs felt weak, as if the weight of all those miles and dangers had suddenly fallen on her. The guards had already reported her arrival. Somewhere beyond those metal doors, the human she sought waited. Or perhaps he was gone, only a memory swallowed by time. Fear and hope twisted inside her as she moved forward. The child stirred, small hands curling, eyes wide and unblinking, sensing the tension around them. The woman whispered softly to calm the little one, though her own heart thundered like a storm. The doors opened with a hiss, and light spilled across the chamber. She froze. There, standing alone, was the figure she had carried in her mind for so long. His shoulders seemed heavier, his face more marked by years of war and burden, but the eyes, the same sharp, human eyes, were unchanged. They locked onto hers, narrowing as if uncertain whether she was a ghost or a trick of memory. He did not move. He only stared, and for a long breathless moment, the entire universe seemed to shrink to the space between them. The woman's lips trembled, but words finally escaped. "Do you remember me?" Her voice cracked, the weight of her journey carried inside those 4 fragile words. The human took a step closer, his boots echoing against the steel floor. His gaze slid from her to the child she carried, and for the first time his hardened expression faltered. Something unspoken flickered in his eyes, something that belonged to the past and the life he had almost forgotten. He whispered her name, slow, uncertain, but real. The sound of it broke her like a wave against the shore. She bowed her head, clutching the child tighter, and tears filled her eyes. But the reunion was not theirs alone. Outside the walls of the outpost, the alien warlords who had hunted her for so long were gathering their fleets. They had not forgiven her for escaping, and they would never allow her to unite with the human who once defied them. Ships burned through the skies above, shadows of war pressing down upon the fragile moment of hope inside the hall. The human looked up, his soldier's instincts snapping back into place. He knew this was no chance encounter, it was destiny, and destiny had brought war to his doorstep. He turned to her, voice steady now, filled with the same steel that had saved her once before. "You crossed the stars to find me. Now I will not let them take you." The woman felt her knees weaken at the certainty in his tone. All her years of flight, all her nights whispering promises to her child, had been for this, finding the one man who would stand against the storm. Yet doubt still gnawed at her. The enemy was stronger than ever. Entire fleets hunted her. Could even a human warrior face that kind of darkness again? The human reached out his hand, not to her, but to the child. The little one stared at him curiously, then reached back with small fingers that wrapped around his. For the first time, the hardened soldier's eyes softened completely. In that touch, something shifted. It was no longer just about her or him. It was about the future, the life she had carried across the void, the life that could not be crushed by war or chains. He straightened, fire burning in his gaze, and spoke as though the entire galaxy could hear him. "They think they can take what is ours. They think they can break what we protect. But they have forgotten what humans do when someone calls for help." Outside, alarms blared. The outpost shook as enemy ships descended. The woman's heart raced. The child whimpered softly. But she did not feel fear this time. Not anymore. She had found him. The galaxy might fall into fire, but she was no longer alone. Together they would face what came next. Together, they would write the ending. And as the first blasts rocked the sky, the human warlord who had once saved an alien girl lifted his weapon and prepared to save her again, this time with a child's future burning brighter than any star.